Good afternoon, it's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm Susan Chapman, speaking up on behalf of the next and coming generations, and it's a bit disappointing that they're not very well represented here. Desmond Tutu, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and former Archbishop of Cape Town, said last week, 25 years ago, people could be excused for not knowing much or doing much about climate change. Today, we have no excuse. No more can it be dismissed as science fiction. We are already feeling the effects. We have 15 years to take the necessary steps. The horse may not have bolted, but it's well on the way through the stable door. Who can stop it? Well, we can, you and I. People of conscience need to break their ties with corporations financing the injustice of climate change. Press our governments to invest in renewables, stop subsidising fossil fuels. So young people across the world have already begun to do something about it. It makes no sense to invest in fossil fuel companies that undermine our future. To serve as custodians of creation is not an empty title. It requires we act, and with the urgency the situation demands. There's a critical need to reduce demand on the Earth's resources. We must use less, and we must act on climate change. But we are failing to act with the urgency needed. So this is the question I asked Bournemouth Council last month. It's quite a long question, so please bear with me. Subsequent to the latest desperate IPCC report, the British Medical Journal, the Lancet, and now the American Association for the Advancement of Science warn us the well-being of people of all nations is at risk. There is a real chance of abrupt, unpredictable and potentially irreversible climate change with highly damaging impact on people all around the globe. The World Meteorological Office tells us the laws of physics are non-negotiable, and the World Bank asserts we face food and water shortages within 5 to 6 years, and that a swift shift from fossil fuels to renewables is necessary to avoid mass migrations, conflict and shortages. In view of the paucity of information from mainstream media and negligent politics, please can Bournemouth Borough Council signed up to the Earth Charter show how it will lead on the climate action, economic policies and behaviour change needed to protect its citizens? So that's my question. So what's our council doing about climate change? The reply, based on the Go Green Bournemouth Community Action Plan, accepts the science and the need for change in light of expensive flooding and weather impacts. There is a carbon management programme to lower energy bills and carbon output, PV in homes and schools, LED lighting, biomass burner, the encouragement of community action and the growth of the green economy, jobs and the laudable aspiration of a national reputation for green technology development. Not mentioned in the Council's answer, but there in black and white on page 25 of that same Go Green Bournemouth plan is Bournemouth's statement of support for the proposed offshore wind farm. So it's extremely disappointing to hear a Bournemouth councillor blasting a group of university students with the negative impacts of the proposed wind farm, or holding public meetings at which all the possible hiccups are mightily stressed, and MPs are invited to adhere to proceedings. Indeed, the very green champion on the scrutiny panel was heard to say recently in an answer that the positive effects would be considered only if there were no negative impacts. Well, I don't suppose any of us would have got married or had children on that basis. Did people like telephone boxes, mobile phone masts, pylons, the Eiffel Tower, the miniskirt, manned flight, noisy aircraft, the Channel Tunnel, jazz? Now, this one project is part of a series, and as time goes on and infant technology improves and becomes cheaper, it would be very good for Bournemouth to have a national reputation for green technology development. The Wirral is currently benefiting hugely economically from their new turbines. It seems unfair that people under the age of 30 are not here represented today, nor is there a climate scientist or climate reality speaker on the panel. I am apparently both the counterbalance to Mr. Pointer as a resident, but also the counterbalance to Dr. Langley on the environment. So perhaps those 12 minutes I've missed out on could have been given to a youngster. And the parliamentary perspective comes from Tobias Elwood and from Connor Burns, who has extraordinarily spoken of the ideology of climate change. It would also be good to hear from Annette Brooke, the only local MP to vote for decarbonisation in the energy bill last year. Wind power works and is producing clean electricity all over the world. To listen to the local debate on narratives, you might think otherwise, but wind power does work. A recent survey by the Department of Energy and Climate Change reports offshore wind is supported by 77% of people, onshore is 70%, solar 85%, nuclear 42%, and shale gas 29%. Wind is variable, but it is predictable and is manageable. To read the various websites attacking the Narratives project, you would think it wouldn't work, its exaggerated stature will bash wildlife to bits, spoil sailors' fun and terrify our visitors. One of the websites has tackled climate change in inverted commas. One would think they did not accept the science. Yet, our UK is the very Saudi Arabia of wind. There is rarely a time when it doesn't blow somewhere around the brilliant gift of our beautiful coasts. Many countries are now powering up mightily, and in Spain, where a friend has some properties surrounded by turbines, the birds have enjoyed finding other ways round them. No reports of wind turbine syndrome, apparently. News from Wales is that birds enjoy the thermal uplifts. In Germany, where much is community-owned, people love solar and wind. Most of the objections seems to centre around the appearance of the wind farm. People who base their opinion on articles and letters in the Echo will form a false impression because the Echo always shows a relatively close-up view of a turbine. This is not what will be seen from the shore. From this distance, on the days when they can be seen at all, the turbines will appear a whole lot smaller than the Poole and Christchurch Bay Association tell us. Far smaller than Challenge Narratives say. Far smaller than Connor Burns tells us. The visual on this Henry leaflet has to be held at a distance of 24 feet, 9 inches to make sense. And of course, the actual turbines will not be seen so clearly as a leaflet at 20-odd feet. At 20-odd kilometres, they will be but hazy, slender shapes about 4 metres on the horizon. We think Mark Smith has got his maths wrong. Backup is needed for all forms of energy generation. After Hurricane Sandy, it was largely wind energy that kept New York going, where not only was a lot of fossil fuel knocked out, but fire and pollution resulted from combusting fuels. Storms and blockages from seaweed or jellyfish often stop nuclear power working. Hinkley C is expected to cost consumers between £800 million and £1 billion every year of its life. Just one power station. We were told in the 60s that this heavily subsidised nuclear power would be too cheap to meter. Renewable costs are dropping while fossil costs continue to rise. Production of conventional oil peaked in 2006, and all other unconventional techniques like shale, tar sands, fracking are less energy effective and much more polluting, itself expensive to clean up. Fossil fuels, nuclear power and carbon damage push most of the costs onto future generations. Subsidies are needed for emerging economies to push markets in the right direction. And yes, what a shame that market leaders are not from the badly supported UK firms. Luckily, we can call on foreign expertise, as we did with the proven Dutch technology that helped so much recently when Somerset was flooded. By opposing onshore wind, the Tories now risk sending southwest jobs overseas, undermining local communities and driving up costs. There are handouts outside for everyone to avail themselves of various facts, too much for here. In a published letter to the Isle of Wight County Press at the end of January this year, a friend wrote of the massive and enthusiastic response from young people for the Cheverton and Wellow wind farms. He wrote, "They have some idea of what they'll be in for. They understand the past few weeks are a picnic by comparison with what they will experience. Our sacrifices for the sake of the next generation out of fashion." He tells us wind power is a relatively new addition to our national grid, but in spite of that, it contributed 17% of the power we consumed on the Saturday before Christmas. None of that 17% put any greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Wind power works. There is no evidence from Welsh onshore turbines of having a detrimental effect on tourism or of visitor returns, and the Wirral is doing well economically with its new array. At Great Yarmouth, there are 30 smaller turbines a mere 1.5 miles from the coast. There has been a positive effect on tourism with boat trips and a visitor centre, as we've seen. In Denmark, the 80 turbines 12 miles from shore are to be doubled in number, and it's likely that reef effects at the base of the turbines will encourage marine life. And what a shame that Dr. Langley and the media didn't make so much noise as the Marine Conservation Zones consultation took place, because there was a great deal of fuss, mostly from a celebrity chef. And we do value all our resources around the coast. Our local friendly researchers have investigated John Yellen's claims and found them to be without substance. The background noise by the pier and at Eastcliff is never less than 70 decibels, so 40 decibels, the noise level of a library from Navitas, would simply be lost in background noise. Strangely, there was no protest about the airport in 2007 when expansion was given the go-ahead, or about people now woken at 5 a.m. by planes, nor of the air festival, which terrifies birds and sends some residents elsewhere for several days. Yet these frightening machines, the turbines, not the military aircraft, allegedly will drive away the tourists. Acidifying oceans, dying coral, species extinction, methane bombs set to wipe out global GDP, no sane society poisons its well. I've asked a counsellor gifted in maths to give us the odds of humanity's survival to the end of the century, and await his answer with interest. So, as I conclude, are we complicit with a Basel 40 West, pushing the poor Manuels back into a burning kitchen? Do we say to our children, sorry, due to lack of interest, tomorrow has been cancelled? Or do we grab a chance to use the technology that may at the moment to some be more Bridget Jones than Brigitte Bardot, and embrace the future with some friendly waving turbines, just visible on the horizon, calling us not to the breakdown of systems, but to a different life? Wind power works, and we would soon regret any decision to turn down this wonderful, timely opportunity to use it off the Dorset coast. So let's say, please, yes to wind, yes to Navitas, and yes to a clean future for our children.